Minister Anand in for the first hour. This is going to be in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and then we're going to switch over to OGGO for the second hour.
Foreign Affairs and International Development. La réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule selon...
Today's meeting will be in hybrid format. According to our regulations, members participating in person and on the Zoom platform.
2. The committee is meeting on the study of the mandate of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I would like to officially welcome our witnesses for the first hour, the Honorable Anita Anand, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, David Morrison, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Richard Arbeiter, Political Director and Assistant Deputy Minister, International Security and Political Affairs Branch, Shirley Caruthers, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, People and Corporate Management Branch and Chief Financial Officer, and Alexandre Levesque, Assistant Deputy Minister, Europe, Middle East and Arctic Branch. Up to 5 minutes will be given for opening remarks, after which we will proceed to rounds of questions. I now invite the Honourable Minister to make her remarks.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais commencer.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to begin by indicating that the Canadians are watching closely the difficulties happening in the Caribbean, given Melissa. So we've announced today $7 million of assistance, humanitarian assistance for people in the region.
More safe and more prosperous. More than 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. Famine and disease have declined, and we have seen shared effort lead to shared prosperity. But today, the multilateral system is under threat as some countries are turning towards protectionism and unilateralism. And around the world, the geopolitical landscape is unstable, with powers shifting in ways that jeopardize Canada's security and prosperity. We face challenges that no country can resolve alone. The strength that we demonstrate abroad begins with our resilience at home. We have a new government, a new prime minister, and a new approach to foreign policy. This foreign policy is built on 3 pillars. 1, defense and security. 2, economic resilience. 3, the integration of core values. These priorities represent our vision for Canada's role on the world stage. Dans cette période économique, le Canada doit...
In this economic period, Canada must diversify its economic contacts and rebuild our supply chain as the best choice for investment. New agreements with the European Union and others, and our agreements in the Pacific demonstrate clearly our will to stabilize and create a stable economy with our allies. This resilience, our prosperity, and our commitment to the global economic regime based on clear rule of law. I will use all diplomatic tools at my capacity to ensure the economic prosperity of Canada and protect us against external threats.
Add that Canada is an Arctic country. The Arctic covers 40% of Canada's territory and more than 70% of our coastline. But the Arctic itself is experiencing major change with the shifting geopolitical landscape, with evolving security threats, and with the acceleration of climate change, all of which reinforce the need for us to protect the Arctic. And that is why we announced Canada's Arctic foreign policy, a $73 billion strategy for Canada's engagement in and on the Arctic. We're also enhancing our engagement in the North by strengthening partnerships with Indigenous communities, expanding regional presence through the recent appointment of an Arctic ambassador, and leveraging our position on the world stage through NATO and through NORAD. As emerging technologies reshape the landscape of conflict, Canada is redefining global norms to navigate the risks and seize the opportunities ahead. Our near $22 billion of support for Ukraine since Russia's further illegal and unjustifiable full-scale invasion demonstrates our unwavering commitment to upholding international law and defending sovereignty. And our core values are our North Star. Canada stands for democracy, the rules-based international order, multilateralism, human rights, gender equality, environmental protection, and reconciliation, and these values are embedded in our foreign policy and will continue to be so. Our new approach to foreign policy is both strategic and pragmatic in order to lead on the world stage. That is why, in Canada's national address at the United Nations, I reiterated our steadfast commitment to strengthening multilateralism by reforming international institutions so that they can meet the challenges of our time. Multilateralism remains key to solving global problems today. One multilateral institution, the G7, is led by Canada this year. During Canada's G7 presidency, we rallied support to advance Canadian economic and security priorities, including the launching of initiatives to coordinate and to strengthen our responses to that threaten maritime security and shipping. La diplomatie canadienne est pragmatique.
Canada's diplomacy is pragmatic. It's focused on building strategic autonomy and delivering real benefits for Canadians. Safer borders, stronger economy, and a world that reflects our values as Canadians. Now, Mr. Chair, I'd be very happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Open the floor for questions, beginning with MP Michael Chong. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for appearing. I have 3 questions, so if we could limit the responses to about 1.5 minutes each, that would be helpful to get through all 3 questions. The first is foreign interference. Global Affairs Canada plays a big role within the Government of Canada on countering foreign interference. There was foreign interference in the last election observed by Global Affairs. The Foreign Influence Transparency Registry has yet to be stood up. The government originally said it would take about 12 months. The Public Safety Minister indicated in the House recently it should be up by year end. There was hope that the registry would be up before the last election. It appears we could have another election before the registry is stood up. So the question is there a sense of urgency within the whole of the Government of Canada about getting this registry up and running before the next second federal election since the bill became law?
Well, I appreciate the question from my honourable colleague, and certainly his work in this area has been so important for the government of the day as well as for the citizens of Canada, so I thank you for your advocacy. I would also like to stress that the recommendations of the report, which I've brought with me here today, are extremely important as well. The foreign registry is one of the issues that I know that my colleague, Minister Ananda Sangari, is taking very seriously. I have spoken with him about the appointment that my honourable colleague mentioned, and he has indicated to me as well that this should be done by the end of the year. As it rests with him, I leave my answer there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister, for that answer. The second question I have concerns the Prime Minister's trip to the Indo-Pacific region. He told leaders at ASEAN that Canada wants to expedite the export of our natural resources, particularly our energy. He said, and I quote, "We're an energy superpower, an unabashed energy superpower. We have the 3rd largest reserves of oil. We have the 4th largest reserves of LNG. We've just started our first LNG shipments." Can you tell the committee how Global Affairs Canada is making the export of our oil and gas, of our LNG, a foreign policy priority?
I appreciate the question, and I want to begin by mentioning the moment that we are in geopolitically and economically. The world is experiencing geopolitical volatility as well as economic stress. On my trip to the region just a couple of weeks ago, I raised as well the importance of opening up bilateral trade, but also protecting Canadian values. And I would say the defense and security of our country also includes ensuring that the Canadian population is protected. And that was one of the foremost issues that I raised. Now, to the question, the member opposite's question, let me just say that Canada has an immense potential to be a leading and a reliable global supplier of critical minerals. We have launched a critical mineral strategy that is going to increase the development of domestic and global supply chains. That issue is on the table in our conversations relating to opening up supply chains with Canada and leveraging our competitive advantages. But I want to come back to my first point. At all times, we are ensuring that we're protecting the Canadian population, the safety and security of the Canadian population, and the sovereignty and rule of law within our own country. Thank you.
Okay, and the third question I have concerns China. I know you recently have been talking about the renewal of the 2005 strategic partnership with the PRC. Is it really strategic, and is it really a partnership, or is that nomenclature a bit of a misnomer? In other words, are we really looking to engage China strategically and in a partnership, or are we simply looking at reopening lines of communication that went dormant on a variety of issues?
Again, I thank my honourable colleague for the question. You are correct that my conversation with my counterpart, Minister Wang Yi, centered on the strategic partnership that was originally in place in 2005 and that formed some of the basis of our conversation just weeks ago in Beijing. I want to first and foremost say that the purpose of the visit wasn't focused on the strategic partnership alone that was referenced in the question. It's about ensuring that Canada's diplomacy is utilized to have constructive and pragmatic conversations. We will at all times defend our national interests and the best interests of Canadians. The meeting was a first step towards recalibrating the relationship and fighting for Canada's interests on the world stage in the way that is most effective. In those meetings, I raised a number of issues. The strategic partnership was one of them, but I will reiterate to say that we are in a moment of recalibrating that relationship.
Thank you. We will go next to MP Anita van der Velde. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's wonderful to see you here, Minister.
Here comes bootlicking.
We're here actually at a very fortuitous moment because tomorrow, October 31st, is exactly 25 years since the signing of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. And at that time, it was recognized that if women are part of peace processes through the entire process, peace agreements are more sustainable. In fact, what we've seen is that if women are at the table, they are 35% more likely to have a peace deal that lasts 15 years or more. And I know that Canada, of course, is now on its third national action plan on women, peace, and security from 2023 to 2029. And I just wondered if you could comment a little bit on some of the successes, because one of the things we said 25 years ago, and again, when I raised this in my maiden speech in Parliament 10 years ago, is that gone are the days where you have warlords who sit around a table, divide the spoils of war, and call it a peace deal. Why is it important that we have inclusive peace agreements that count for everybody in a society? And can you tell us some of the successes that Canada has had?
Well, I thank my honourable colleague for the question and again for her work in this area over a number of years. As she rightly points out, Canada has been a champion of gender equality for decades. In 2023-24 alone, Canada reached over 40 million people with international assistance projects, and some of those projects addressed sexual and gender-based violence. Recently, in terms of successes, I would say I characterize it as cooperative efforts. Canada actually joined 30 other countries in a declaration from the 4th Ministerial Conference on Feminist Foreign Policies in Europe. That's October 22-23. In support of gender equality, women's rights, and a feminist approach to international engagement. Canada remains committed to implementing the WPS, that's Women, Peace and Security Agenda, through our 3rd National Action Plan, which extends to 2029. And so let me conclude this response simply by saying that as we mark the 25th anniversary of the WPS agenda, we should look back and reflect on progress, but we also have to focus on the immense work ahead. Thank you.
What the hell
Thank
was
you
that?
very much, Minister, for that commitment. And we know that despite Canada's leadership, right now in 2024, according to UN Women, of the peace agreements that were signed, only 7% were signed by women, and only 14% of peace mediators globally in the conflicts around the world are women. And I just would like to ask you personally, because you are a very strong woman leader in your own right, who has committed tremendously in your career to gender equality, to women's participation, to women's inclusion. And you've also been defense minister and foreign affairs minister. So you have a particularly unique perspective about why women's voices actually contribute to greater outcomes, contribute to longer lasting peace, and why it is important. So I wonder if you could give us a few of your personal reflections about what is needed and also about what the opportunities are for Canada to lead in this area.
Well, I thank my colleague for this question. Let me say that the statistics that you mentioned are very important. There's another statistic that I think about also, which is that conflict-related sexual violence documented by the UN increased by 87% over the last 2 years alone. And so it is so important to ensure that there are women's voices at the table. The second term of Canada's Ambassador for Women, Peace and Security concluded this year, and our government is currently considering options for how best to sustain leadership on WPS at home and globally. My honourable colleague mentioned previous positions that I have held. I'll say one of the reasons I ran for office in the first place was because I believe that women's voices at the table, at numerous tables, are so crucial in this moment. And in particular, this isn't just in government. This is in public and private institutions, in hospitals, in universities, in corporations.
Go drill an oil
and
pipeline. You know what I mean?
not-for-profit organizations also. And as I was a law professor for over 20 years, I tried to focus my research on women and minorities in leadership positions. One of the studies that I did was an empirical study of the presence of women and minorities on boards of directors, because my area of research and writing was corporate and securities law, and I found that women are about 16% of public company boards and about 4% racial minorities on public company boards. And so this is just an example of the work that I'm trying to carry over to some extent to other areas of my life. That is, there are certain values that we hold dear, and that is to ensure that there are multiple voices at the table. One large voice, of course.
Why is it
that of
always the
women.
C-suite
Thank you,
that they
Minister.
want?
Next,
If they
we'll
want to
go
be
to
represented
the,
evenly at
the
all
set-
levels, why
vous
don't they
avez
go
6
lay some brick? Or, you know what I mean?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you
It's
very
just-
much,
it's just
Chair,
always the
and
Board of
thank you, Madam
Directors are-
Minister, for being with us this afternoon.
always the
we
top
were
that
reading
they
in
want.
the media that 3 years after qualifying China as a real strong economic source, Canada would perhaps consider Peking a very important ally, but in a stable and presents a risk to Canada. We're talking about the possibility of some reports have been made and heard. We've done some with the committee here on human rights affairs. Has to do with the treatment of the Uyghurs. And there was a motion that was passed unanimously in Parliament criticizing the treatment of the Uyghurs. So this new strategic partnership that you've mentioned and what Ms. Carney was said, doesn't it rather contradict some of the work that was done in the Parliament itself? Well, thank you for the question. Let me begin by stressing the reason for which I was there was to ensure the recalibration of our relationship with China. We need a forum in which to discuss the various risks and dangers that exist. I've had several discussions with my counterpart, not only to develop a strategic strategy, and Canada is very concerned about the violations that are occurring against human rights, and we will continue to stress the importance of humanitarian law everywhere in the world and intervene to support the Uyghurs in China by diplomatic means and through our efforts at the United Nations, including the Council of Human Rights at the UN. Madam Minister, in trying to normalize a new strategic partner within economic aims with China, are you not also standardizing the conditions of humanitarian law in China? Did you specifically talk about the Uyghurs in Xinjiang? And have you perhaps discussed the situation of the Tibetans in particular, specifically? Well, thank you, but I think that I've just indicated it's important to recall that I had a 2-hour conversation with my counterpart, and we discussed a number of issues, including our strategic partnership and including human rights issues and the issues, the challenges that exist between Canada and China. I was there as a minister to represent the Canadian population. So I had to really underline the existence and the nature of our Canadian values as well. Well, a minister often has to undertake difficult conversations, and my objective at the time and always well, difficult discussions. I understand what you're meaning. Did you consult with a minority which is subject to this repression with your Chinese counterpart? What message will the Tibetan or Uyghur diaspora receive what would you say to those people? Well, I would invite my honourable colleague to read out the
Oh my God, this translator's awful.
report on the discussions with my
Narrating
Chinese
animal
counterpart.
shows.
We identified all the various challenges that we discussed at that meeting.
Canada is a world leader in advancing human rights and the rules-based international order, and this will never change. Diplomacy is about bringing forward difficult issues and ensuring that we're representing Canadian interests. That diplomacy on that day was done minister to minister, and we will always put the needs of Canadians first, and we will not shy away from our commitment, which is present in multilateral organizations and multilateral commitments, as well as with our bilateral relationships, our commitment to our values, including human rights.
Yes, thank you. We'll go next to MP Ziad Abul Taif. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to the Minister. Minister, earlier this year, the Prime Minister called or said that China was the biggest threat or security threat to Canada. Now your government is looking for closer ties with Beijing, renewing a partnership of some kind that include security. Have you raised with your counterpart the Chinese government police stations in Canada, and can you tell us if these stations still operate or they stop?
Comme j'ai dit juste maintenant que nous
Well,
avons
as I've just said, we discussed a number of issues and challenges, including human rights and the security of our population. The challenges is that of public security in our country. And as my colleague, the Ananda Sanders has said, and whose portfolio it is, shared the portfolio where we share some of these issues.
About the police stations, because you are the Foreign Affairs Minister, and if anyone to discuss that with countries such as China, it's your job. And I'm asking if that discussion took place, yes or no, and that must have led to an understanding whether those stations still operate in Canada or not.
As I said, I invite my honourable colleague to review the readout of my meeting with my counterpart. And in particular, I will say that we discussed several issues of a diplomatic nature, and I, at all times, in all meetings, raise issues relating to public safety and security for the Canadian public. In my UN speech on September 29th in New York, I specifically outlined the 3 pillars of our foreign policy, the first one of which is the protection of the security and defense of the Canadian public. So I want to reiterate that at all times in my conversations, bilaterally and multilaterally, I never shy away from raising these important issues. My point about my colleague, Minister Ananda Sangri, is that here in Canada, the public safety and security of Canadians in this country is under his purview.
I'll go back to the question, Minister. Well, with all due respect, I know that you present Canada and the interests of Canada, and that is our job and your job. But again, the question is very specific, and your diplomatic answer to us is not going to serve the committee. We have a study here, and we would like to know if you had, in specific, that conversation with the Chinese counterpart about their police stations in Canada.
Yeah, it's a yes or no
As I
question.
have provided two answers, I will now provide a third. We have been clear at all levels that the issues raised by my colleague will not be tolerated. We are very, very committed to ensuring that we have a comprehensive area and relationship that we can raise the issues relating to the broader relationship in, and that's diplomacy. Diplomacy is not walking away from tough issues. Diplomacy is being able to have the conversation about Canadian interests and Canadian values and Canadian goals and objectives, and that's what our diplomacy seeks to do.
But Canadians deserve clear answers.
Yeah.
And this is the place for it. I do agree that you can use your tactics and diplomacy to work with your counterparts around the world. But the committee and Canadians are watching. They deserve an answer. And I think I'm expecting an answer. Your tactics and diplomacy to work with your counterparts around the world. But the committee and Canadians are watching. They deserve an answer. And I think your
What the hell is going
tactics
on?
and diplomacy.
Man, they gotta fix whatever they're having problems with in Parliament. Like they've been doing. It's been happening all
Tactics and
week.
diplomacy to work with your counterparts around the world. But the committee and Canadians are watching. They deserve an answer. And I think I'm expecting an answer from you because I think my question is very clear. Have you had that specific conversation about the police stations in Canada with the Chinese counterpart? Yes or no?
Very brief response, Minister.
Je pourrais le dire, mais la
respond in
sécurité de
French.
notre population.
Well, the security of the Canadian population is absolutely vital within our mandate, within our government, and at every meeting, I always stress the importance of that public safety.
Vous avez 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le
Thank you very much, Chair. Madam Minister, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
the emerging geopolitical.
I also just want to mention that Carney's meeting with the Chinese president tomorrow, Xi Jinping, and I'd also like to know if the Prime Minister is raising that kind of concern. I mean, we had Chinese police stations operating in Canada. Do we have Canadian police stations operating in China? No.
A new partnership with Finland. And I would really like you to expand on how these initiatives could and will actually advance Canada's strategic, environmental, and economic interest in the North.
OK, merci beaucoup. Peut-être je pourrais répondre en français et
Thank you. I'm going to try to answer both in French and in English. No problem.
finish my answer to my honorable colleague's previous question. And that question related to women's leadership in all areas, including in peace and security. And I just wanted to tip my hat to you, as well as to my honorable colleague Anita Vandenbeld, and you both have done considerable work in terms of women, peace, and security. And we owe a debt of gratitude to you for your efforts as well. I would like to say that, in answer to your question, comme vous savez que le Canada est un pays arctique, et c'est...
I remind you again, of course, that Canada is an Arctic nation, and it's very vital at this particular time in geopolitical developments to have sovereignty, assure our sovereignty in the North. We'll be doing that, of course, in conjunction with the indigenous populations. We see we are going to invest $73 billion over the next few years, and we've launched the purchase of 2 new icebreakers and Arctic cruisers.
Mr. Blair played a very large part in ensuring got off the ground. We've named an Arctic ambassador as well, with an office in Iqaluit, and we've taken steps to open a consulate in Nuuk. In particular, I will be traveling to Nuuk, Greenland, in the coming weeks to officially open our consulate there. This gives you an idea of the seriousness with which we are taking our Arctic foreign policy that sees a greater footprint in the Arctic.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez participé à la
You participated in the Nordic 5 conference in August last. I'd like to hear a bit more of how we anticipate that Canada will work with all the circumpolar nations for the security of the Arctic. I know you referred to it, but I'd like to know a bit more what occurred at those meetings and how this would benefit the Baltic countries.
OK, c'est une bonne question, bien sûr. I just wanted to wait to see if you wanted to ask anything else. Obviously, the Arctic is an area that affects a number of countries. And so what I have been pushing is the viewpoint that NATO, a collective defense organization for the North Atlantic, should focus on the North Atlantic and the Arctic as well as on Europe. And I've had this conversation with my counterparts, the Nordic 5, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, as well as Iceland. And I've also spoken with Secretary Rubio and the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, about this point, that as we see greater threats in the Arctic, we need to utilize multilateral alliances and collective defense to address those issues.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Duceppe, you have 2.5 minutes. You're next.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I would like a straightforward answer, if I could, Madam Minister. Madam Minister. Is our economic trade with China increasing or decreasing?
Is currently addressing in the region now. In my conversations with my counterpart recently, I took steps to recalibrate the relationship so that Canada can have a conversation with this
j'ai posé une
country.
petite question, j'attendais une petite
It was
réponse.
a fairly straightforward question, and I was hoping to get a very short answer. But we import a lot of goods from China, and many of these products are using forced labor. The American law is much more clear and harsh, if you will, on goods that are created through forced labor. But I've never succeeded yet. We have never enacted any legislation which is stronger. My colleague from from Sherbrooke has proposed a bill. Will you perhaps introduce a bill that reverses the onus of responsibility, that these are not created through forced labor? And perhaps you would support the block bill.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, on the bill, we are looking at the content of this bill, and we will give consideration of the process as well of driving a bill through its future stages. Enforced labor is unacceptable, and we have to ensure that our global supply chains remain free of it. I'm discussing the challenges of this with my fellow minister responsible for procurement, and with Minister Sidhu. We will protect Canada's interests, making sure that labor law is the same for all people. Thank you, Madam Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, as you know, oil and gas are Canada's single largest exports. And so I'd like to once again focus on the Prime Minister's comments at ASEAN, where he said that Canada is an unabashed energy superpower and wants to expedite exports of more oil and gas. As you know, Minister, the Prime Minister has a special responsibility for the conduct of international affairs. I note that in the Indo-Pacific strategy, the word oil does not appear once, the word gas does not appear once, and the word LNG does not appear once, and there's no mention in the IPS of increasing and expediting the increase of Canada's oil and gas. So my question is simple. Will the IPS be updated now that the Prime Minister has set this as a foreign policy priority, or is it dead letter?
I have asked my department to provide me with an update to the Indo-Pacific strategy, period. I believe that the Indo-Pacific strategy needs to be updated because we have a new government, a new foreign policy, and a new Prime Minister. And you rightly point out that there is a need to ensure that our bilateral relationships are raising the issues that matter to this country. The world has changed since the Indo-Pacific strategy was released, and we need to ensure that our foreign policy is responsive to Canada's needs now. And that is why the Prime Minister recently announced that Canada is embarking on a new mission to double our non-US exports in the next decade. And that is why the LNG exports that we have seen from Canada's west coast will continue. In my travels and every bilateral conversation, the world wants more Canada. They want to find out how they can participate in the benefits of Canada's LNG exports and Canada's energy. This is absolutely clear from every conversation that I am in. And so I will always, in those meetings, connect the energy ministers of the country I'm in with the energy minister, Minister Hodgson here, and that is why the issue of energy and Canada's ability to be an energy superpower figures so centrally in every bilateral conversation that I'm in.
Thank you for that answer, and thank you for that information that the Indo-Pacific strategy is being updated. Could you tell the committee what time frame we're looking at here for an updated Indo-Pacific strategy?
I have asked the department to come forward as soon as possible, and perhaps I could ask my deputy minister if he could provide us with some information relating to timing.
So my marching orders were as soon as possible, so it would be as soon as possible, Minister. I would say, though, strategies are not straitjackets, right? As the Minister has said, the world is very different now than it was in 2022 when the strategy was released. So we are not waiting, as recent events have shown, to take initiatives because they're no longer completely in keeping with what we wrote in 2022. And I think that's why you've seen Minister Anand on the road where she has been, and why you're seeing some of the things the Prime Minister is saying and doing.
Thank you. I'll just finish with a comment. You know, we've long felt that Canada needs to increase our conventional energy exports, particularly liquefied natural gas. It would be good to see Canadian liquefied natural gas displace Qatari and Russian natural gas, particularly with partners in the Indo-Pacific like Japan, and with allies like Germany and other European allies. And so, I hope the government is going to deliver on this increase to expedite these exports. We believe it's not just an imperative for our economy, but equally an imperative for our defense and security, both the Euro-Atlantic defense and security and the Indo-Pacific defense and security.
It's exactly right. And let's just go through the list. I've had this very conversation with my counterparts in Japan, in India, with my South Korean counterpart when I met him in New York, in Mexico, and the list goes on. The reality is that Canada is already seen as a leader in LNG. What we need to do is continue our competitive advantage and leadership in this area, and that is the intention of the Government of Canada.
By not building any more pipelines?
Next we go to MP Bill Blair. You have 5 minutes.
By having a tanker ban? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my personal...
And if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Let's swap over to OGGO, because this is pretty much done here. She's only in for another 10 minutes, and then she's gone. Boom, close that.
Government. That's why we launched the Trust and Transparency Strategy to strengthen openness and rebuild confidence in our institutions.
So was that a yes then?
I can say that we're committed to building a more open and accountable government, and transparency is strengthened to openness and rebuild confidence in our institutions.
So that something like that would definitely be a great way to show transparency.
We're committed to transparency and accountability. That's what I can
Minister,
assure you.
Right now, Canadians need a PhD to find the bottom line. They want a clear front page summary, a simple table showing the big numbers up front instead of buried hundreds of pages deep. So a one-page at a glance means taxpayers, journalists, MPs, we can all see at a glance how much is coming in, how much is going out, and how deep we're in debt. So in the next budget, will the first 15 pages show a one-page at a glance, total revenue, total spending, deficit surplus, and debt? Yes or no?
Chair, through you, thank you for the question. My colleagues just want to remind you, you cannot have one pager of the household budget. This is we're talking about country's budget. So these public accounts will be tabled well ahead of their deadline, and it will be detailed and it will be public. Thank you.
So right now, parliamentarians and Canadians actually can't tell if the government's staying on budget. And a side-by-side table, for instance, in the Fiscal Monitor would make it easy for us to see when spending is off track. Would you... Will the Fiscal Monitor actually include a side-by-side versus the original budget, so for revenue, spending, and balance, yes or no?
I'd just like to remind my colleagues, we have rules and we have regulations, and legislation says it's December 31st is a deadline to table public accounts. So we will have well in advance the legislated deadline, the public accounts, but I'd like to
sorry. I'm
ask.
really short on my time, so I have a number of questions yet. Minister, especially on transparency and accountability, the difference between what was promised in the budget and what actually happened was far too big last year. Would you agree?
Again, I think it's a new timeline of presenting a budget. I think this will streamline more. It'll give more clarity.
Do you agree, yes or no?
We would have main estimate ahead of time. And
Do
then
you
budget.
agree, yes or no, was my question?
I could based on facts, what we have there. It's not about my opinion,
Thank
what
you
we have
very
in
much.
legislation.
That is our time. Ms. Khalid, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the ministers for being here today.
Not
I'll start
Khalid.
with President
Oh,
Ali,
no.
if that's okay. We've been in a lot of turmoil in our economy in Canada. And one of the policies in September that our Prime Minister announced was the suite of proposed Buy Canadian measures. And I'm wondering, what does that look like in terms of the Treasury Board? Is that something that you would be responsible of putting together, of regulating, of mandating? Or if it's not your organization, which organization would it be?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair, this new government was elected on the mandate to spend less and invest more and build the strongest economy in the G7 and to balance our operational budget in 3 years. That's exactly what we're doing. And on top of that, we're making historic investment where priorities of Canadian have, which is infrastructure, housing, and Canadian armed forces. And at the same, as a president of the Treasury Board, I have launched a red tape review. We received 500 initiatives from organizations, which means removing barriers and removing overly complicated regulations and streamlining the process to make it easier for businesses to grow and cut their costs. And to further, I'd just like to ask my deputy to, Bill, if you can
Certainly, Minister.
Comment on that, please.
One quick point, and then I'll kick it to our colleagues to the left. So the link between Buy Canada and Treasury Board itself is we have Treasury Board policies, which are applicable to all departments, including policy on procurement, and we do bring forward any regulations. So if there are regulatory changes, they would come through TBS. But the real leaders of the show here are to my left, so can I maybe turn over to my colleagues?
Thank you. Minister Lightbound, please help us out here.
Oui, mais d'abord, j'adore la question parce que je pense que ça va être...
First of all, I love this question because I think it will be a keystone policy of our government and of my department. So the Buy Canadian policy will really be important. The broad outlines were announced by the Prime Minister in September, and the Treasury Board will be sort of operationalizing it. But essentially the idea is to prioritize Canadian companies, focus on Canadian content, having reciprocal agreements with other reliable trading partners, looking at big procurement projects and trying to use Canadian materials in those projects, like steel and aluminum, for example, which were targeted by tariffs. So we're currently doing consultations on the Buy Canadian policy. Those won't last very long because we do need to act quickly. So I'm going to take this opportunity to tell people, if anyone is interested in submitting their suggestions about the Buy Canadian plan, please do. One fundamental part of it, which I forgot to mention, is really supporting small and medium businesses and helping them bid on Government of Canada contracts. Something that I've heard from everywhere is that it's often hard to do business with the Government of Canada. So we need to simplify that process for SMEs. And I think that my Deputy Minister would agree that it's always better for a company to get a contract than to get a subsidy. Of course, we have to do this in a responsible way while respecting all of our requirements. But we also need to be pragmatic and realistic when it comes to this policy.
Thank you very much for that. So, Minister Lightbound, how do we reconcile when we are trying to create more efficiencies within departments, and then also with the Buy Canada policy? Where do you think we will land on this? I know that you're going through consultations, which is an excellent process, but I do wonder in terms of costs of goods and of services in Canada.
Si je comprends bien votre question, c'est quel serait par exemple
If I've understood your question, it would be like, what is the premium for Buy Canadian? But, you know, in the procurement processes that we oversee, 91% of our suppliers are Canadian suppliers. I think one of the aspects of the plan will be to ensure that value is created and added in Canada. When it comes to the premium, I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg question in that if you build, you know, capacity in Canada, then costs go down and you get economies of scale. For example, we could talk to the... Oh, I hear a phone ringing. I don't know who's calling us about this.
Le temps qui vous a été consacré.
Too bad.
Got it. Mr. Ali, I have a question for you. What is the salary amount for the CEO of the Defense Investment Agency?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I would pass it on to my deputy for that technical question.
I've seen it in the media, but TBS does not actually, Treasury Board Secretary does not have a role in the salary determination for people appointed in those positions. We are the broader public service, the executives and the non-executive members.
In the media, sir.
I've seen ranges up around $700,000, but I do not know if that's accurate.
Is that the highest salary available for an appointee?
Again, Treasury Board Secretary is not involved in those determinations, so I cannot really give you good answers on these questions.
So you had no role to play whatsoever in this?
The Treasury Board Secretary does not.
Okay. What's the relationship going to look like between the DIA and the Treasury Board going forward?
I think DIA is it's an agency within the departments, and we have the rules in place and regulations across all agencies, and same rule applies to every organization.
Oh, okay. So your colleague, the Secretary of National Defense, says that the agency will deal with all purchases over $100 million. On the approvals process, he said, and I quote here, "We don't have to go to the Treasury Board a million times. We can just do it." Does this mean that you will no longer have oversight on this?
That doesn't say, through you, Chair, that there's no oversight. Of course, Treasury Board has an oversight policy implementation. But in defense, we have committed to making historic investment to secure our border and secure sovereignty. Since I came into Treasury Board, I'm trying to streamline the process, to remove the barriers, to cut the waiting time so we can process more quickly, and we should be able to provide quicker the tools to our armed forces so they can protect our borders and secure our sovereignty. But that doesn't mean that we don't have oversight. Thank you.
I'm glad you answered that, sir, because the Secretary of Defense went on to say that we are going to move at the speed of relevance to meet the moment. And from your perspective, you're saying you're going to have relevance. It doesn't appear to me that you're going to have any relevance if it comes to the Secretary of National Defense, and he's in charge of procurement over $100 million or more. Because he doesn't want to come back and see you for any... Because you hold the check, you hold the purse strings. But it doesn't seem like he is abiding by that.
Through you, Chair, I think I would ask, there is a check and balance here, there is oversight, but for understanding of my colleague, I would ask Bill to explain that how that system works and how we can have that oversight on that. Thanks.
How much time do I have, Mr. Chair, just so I can give a good answer? Okay, I'll be as quick as I can. The bottom line, as the Minister's already said, Treasury Board policies apply to all departments and special operating agencies, same rules. Special operating agencies can, though, as can departments, come in and ask for exceptions to Treasury Board policy, which special operating agencies have done in the past, so they can get additional authorities. This new organization will be bringing in their planned procurements to Treasury Board ministers for approval. We are hoping to streamline the way Treasury Board deals with these things, but it's still very early days for this new organization.
Thank you, sir, for that answer. I have a quick question for Mr. Lightbound. Given that you voted against recouping money from GC Strategies for the Arrive scam, how can Canadians be assured that you're getting the best value for their hard-earned taxpayer dollars, sir?
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Quand vous regardez les actions que notre gouvernement a prises,
When you look at the actions that the government has taken
Holy crap, they turned down the volume.
to implement
I can't even
all
hear
of the
him.
Auditor General's recommendations from ArriveCan, I think we can be sure that all the rules are in place to have, better transparency, better application of the rules. We looked at the Office of the Integrity of Suppliers. That's going to be overseeing contracts for the next 7 years, and I think that should reassure any Canadians listening today.
Thank you very much, Chair. My first question is for Minister Ali. As a member of Parliament here in Ottawa representing Canada, I have many constituents, of course, who are public servants who I hear from on a regular basis on a variety of different issues. And I myself had the pleasure of being a public servant for the first 13 years of my career. Interestingly enough, last weekend I had a conversation with a constituent who works at ESTC. And she was sharing with me that there's a voluntary list right now where employees are able to add their name if they wish to be considered for a position or an opportunity in D&D. And I thought that was really interesting that's happening right now. And I'd love to hear any more that you can share on this initiative or steps that we're taking to be able to ensure that highly skilled public servants have opportunities in areas where we are investing.
Thank you, my colleague, through you, Chair. As you know, we're making historic investment. We're taking bold action, delivering results. We're making historic investments in our Canadian armed forces. And to build Canada home and infrastructure, the priorities matter most to Canadians, which means there are thousands of jobs, high-quality jobs, and maybe thousands of jobs here in Ottawa. There would be plenty of opportunities. CER is an exercise to finding, saving, and reassigning those resources where priorities that matters most to Canadians. That is the goal, and that is the focus we have. And then I'll pass it on to my deputy to shed light more on that, more specific, please.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe 2 points here. One, what ESDC is doing is totally voluntary. It makes perfect sense, good sense, because National Defence is hiring, and most public servants are aware of that and are sending their CVs or applying for jobs as they become open. So that's an informal thing. We also have formal mechanisms because there are occasions when departments are downsizing, and there are already some going on, where you can be put on a list to formally be considered for any job openings. And maybe I'll ask my colleague Francis to elaborate on that.
Thank you. Simply to add that the regime of staffing in the public service is managed by an agency called the Public Service Commission, and because they are pocketed hiring in the public service currently, D&D being one of the most important, the Public Service Commission has also put some informal mechanism in place to try to do a matchmaking in order for employees to raise their hand and say, I'm interested, so we can actually try to secure the continuous employment for employees who are interested to make that transition.
Amazing. It's great to hear. And I know the constituent I was speaking with was quite excited about that program and that opportunity. Perhaps a question for Minister Lightbound. We haven't talked about Centre Block yet today. But it is certainly, Centre Block holds a symbolic and cultural importance here for Canadians. And there's a tremendous amount of work underway. I'm looking forward. I have a tour scheduled next week. I can't wait to get in and to see the progress. But I'm wondering if you can share some of the measures that are being taken to preserve the historical significance of Centre Block while also modernizing it to fit the needs of today.
Cool. Thank you. Merci pour la question. C'est
Thank
vrai.
you for the question. It's true that the parliamentary precinct does have a particular importance, and the renovations happening on Centre Block, if I'm not wrong, are actually the biggest construction site in Canada at the moment. So that's really huge, and it has a huge importance to our democracy as well. It's a big, important symbol, and the work is going well. I know that this is a file that my deputy minister has been following for a long time, so I might let her give you the details.
We're doing on the heritage aspects of Centre Block and, in fact, the whole parliamentary precinct. I think that the first thing to do
I have
is...
to interrupt you there because we are out of time. Perhaps you can provide in a writing. My most favorite words today. Please get back to us in writing. Madame Gaudreau for 2.5, then we'll go to Mrs. Block, and then back to Mr. Watcher to finish up.
Monsieur le Président, Chair. I do want to say that the documentation we get is complimentary, because sometimes we do get a lot of good answers in writing, and we do read them all. So my question is for the president of the Treasury Board. You are the manager of public funds. It seems that we're heading toward a kind of pre-pandemic system. So what I hear by that is austerity, job losses. There are people watching today, and I'd like to know, in these major budget cuts that are coming, what kind of numbers are we going to see?
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to thank all our public servants for their commitment, their dedication. They play a pivotal role in delivering services to Canadians. So I like to thank them for their service. As my colleague know, that comprehensive expenditure review we have launched. I launched along with my colleague, Minister of Finance. We have received proposals from organization, over 100 organizations, and they are being reviewed. No decisions has been made. I will share the information as soon as possible. Thank you.
That was a long way to just say wait.
D'avoir les informations, d'ailleurs. I'm looking forward to getting that information, and I think that will also allow us to see, if it 360,000 public servants, are we talking about maybe 10,000 in PSPC? I mean, there's a lot of expertise in the government, and I think we've seen a lot of cuts in the past. And so I'm really eager to see how things are going to be redistributed. I think I'm already out of time, Mr. Chair, so I'll just look forward to your written answers.
Thank you, Madame Gaudreau. Mrs. Block, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I really only have a couple of questions left. One for both of the ministers. Mr. Lightbound, in answer to my colleague's question in regards to how you voted in the House when the Conservatives called for the money that was defrauded from Canadians by ArriveCan to be returned, you voted against that motion. And in your response to my colleague, you said that PSP is adopting all the AG recommendations, and as such, there's rules to make sure there's better transparency. Are you suggesting that because there will be better rules for transparency, you will then be more committed to ensuring that Canadians will get value for their money?
Non, c'est un engagement de tout temps, là.
No, this is an ongoing commitment to ensuring that our procurement gets the best value for Canadians and that process is competitive and transparent. What I'm saying is that over time, as you know, there were a number of reports, and over time we implemented recommendations not just from the Auditor General but from the Ombudsman as well, which allowed us to improve our data, have more transparency, and ensure that our clients...
Because this isn't about improving data. This is about how you voted in the House when parliamentarians were called on to support a motion to recoup money that had been taken from Canadians by GC strategies. And you voted against that. Have you some newfound commitment to ensuring that there will be value for money spent by the Government of Canada?
Madame Bloch, vous êtes une parlementaire. Vous savez très bien que
Ms. Bloch, you're an experienced parliamentarian, and you know that motions in the House are often used to play partisan games. But actions speak louder than words. In this case, we pursued GC strategies as well as other suppliers where there was fraudulent activity. So we sued them rather, and we did get back a lot of the money. We are holding people responsible.
Because the House compelled you to. That's why.
Ces litiges-là étaient bien avant la motion dont vous faites état. Ces litiges-là
That was well before the motion you're referring to.
Mr. Ali, the TBS paid KPMG $700,000 for advice on how to cut consultants. Why are you spending $6 billion more?
Through you, Mr. Chair, respectfully, I think you don't have correct information. This was not TBS. I could ask my deputy to shed light on this, please, to educate my colleague.
Certainly, there was one department that I'm aware of that did indeed engage a consulting firm for advice on how to reduce budgets. It was not Treasury Board Secretariat, as the Minister said. I'm going from memory. I believe it was Natural Resources Canada. It was a few years ago. We should confirm that, though. I can tell you.
I'm pretty sure it was Minister Anand who announced that they had hired consultants to provide advice on how to cut external consulting fees. I would appreciate that, and if you could provide that information, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Please go ahead for 5 minutes.
Je vais partager mon temps avec MP Khalid.
I'll share my time with Ms. Khalid. Chair, as you know, in the coming days, there will be two special events happening. One is Halloween, and the other is Remembrance Day. I will be able to sell poppies with members of the Royal Canadian Legion, my local branch, as I have always done and will continue to do.
Okay, relevance? I mean, this is all good,
The colleague
but
for
relevance?
Laurentier de la Belle asked a question at the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I want to say that we are going to stand by our veterans in the coming years. And how will you do so? Whoever would like to answer.
Je peux vous dire qu'on a une obligation.
Well, I can say that we have a solemn duty to take care of our veterans and to respect what they gave to this country. We take that very seriously. More broadly, on November 4th, we will be called to vote on a budget here in the House, a budget that will provide a significant increase to members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and I sincerely hope that our colleagues from all parties will support that increase. because it will help the men and women who volunteer to help the Canadian Armed Forces.
Thank you very much. My question, I guess is going to be the last one, will be to Minister Ali. The Conservative leader has really criticized the public services diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And then on the flip side, we've also heard from public service that are saying that the policies are not strong enough to help protect them in the work that they do. So there's questions now, as the Conservative leader said, suggesting that these policies are undermining merit-based hiring and promotion. And then on the flip side, we're hearing a completely different story from public service. So how do you respond to that concern, Minister? And how does the Treasury Board balance DEI priorities while ensuring that it is all merit-based?
Thank you for the question. This is a really important question that leads to, I believe, is diversity, inclusion is a strength of Canadian fabric. You cannot exclude that from our identity as a Canadian. So I think it's, I do not agree with the leader of the opposition on this narrative. Canada's new government is working to build a federal public service that sees a difference as our strength. We know that the diverse public service can better meet the needs of Canadians. While Conservatives are trying to divide Canadians, we stay focused on what matters most for Canadians. So diversity is our strength, and we have rules in place in Treasury Board to have that equal opportunities for everyone. And I could ask my deputy to add some more on this, please, if you can.
Do I have time, Mr. Chair?
15 seconds, Mr. Matthews.
So thank you.
As Ms. Khalid will allow it.
Sorry, that's twice. Sorry, my apologies. As my colleague Francis already said, the hiring is actually run by the Public Service Commission. But you know, when you're looking at merit criteria, there is a way to balance the merit criteria as well as ensuring that the public service we have reflects Canada. Francis, do you want to add anything to?
What I would add is that there's actually a sequence in how the hiring process is done. And merit come first. And when merit is established, then we're ensuring that we have the representation on employment equity issues as well, as per the legislation requires. So this is kind of a good way to ensure that merit is never compromised for other criterias. But diversity and inclusion is obviously a very important component of the fabric that we want to create in public service, but never at the expense of meritorious candidates.
But merit's a threshold.
So just as a follow-up, that I know that a number of years ago, there had been a pilot project that had been instilled within various departments that proposed name-blind resumes. Where is that project at? Is that something that has become policy now?
It hasn't become policy, but it has become good practice. So we see this in multiple departments where deputy ministers are delegated for their staffing. You see this as a good practice, yes.
Thanks, Ms. Khalid. Thank you for joining us today. Before you go, we've got, I promise we'll get you out of time. We have about 3 minutes, so I'm just going to leave you with a couple of things. Minister Ali, your predecessor, one of your predecessors, Scott Bryson, when he was in this role, had committed to providing both the PBO and this committee and publicly a breakdown of all saving reductions as well as effect on services. Will you be able to do the same for us? And it's a brief yes or no. And I want to get back, well,
yeah, thank you, Chair, for the question. I will provide you information as soon as possible. We have finalized that. Thanks.
And Mr. Matthews and I had chatted about this before. There was an issue brought forward, presented to your department over a year and a half ago, and your top executives in the department over the issue of federal money being used as infrastructure projects that are employing illegal laborers illegally. And it goes a bit to Ms. Reza's comments about the contractors aren't being aware of the subcontractors. But this is an issue that the government is aware about, or aware of, the contractors are aware of. I'm wondering if perhaps you can get back to us in writing about, and Mr. Matthews and I can certainly follow up, is what the government is going to do to stop this practice. It's had a year and a half. The documents have been provided showing this problem, and what the federal government is going to do to ensure that taxpayers' money is not being used on federal projects that are employing illegal and trafficked labor. And please, you're welcome to get back to us, because you only have about 2 minutes before Mr. Lightbound perhaps gets into an issue with
Chair,
this.
if you allow me, that Mr. Secretary can. Yeah.
Please do so. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Mr.
And I'm not
Chair.
looking for like an immediate
No.
decision right now, but just how we can address this issue.
It's a really important issue the chair has raised both here and offline. A couple of things. The projects that the chair highlighted for TBS to look into were federally funded infrastructure projects being delivered by other levels of government. The agreements we have with provinces and municipalities always say you must respect the law. What I have done since this information was raised, I've raised it with my provincial counterparts to make sure they're aware of the issue. I've also raised it with the leadership of the infrastructure team federally, as well as a few other departments. Seeing the chair raise this again, it does make me realize that a number of those people have changed jobs since I raised it the first time. So I will commit to coming back to this committee.
Appreciate, Mr. Matthews. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm looking for what we can do as a federal government. We have processes that prohibit the federal government from contracting with companies that are using forced labor out of Xinjiang province. We hold those companies accountable. We are aware of what Ms. Rez is saying about the issue of subcontractors. Just perhaps, again, and I'm not looking for a policy answer right now, but perhaps in writing what we can do or what will be done to ensure that our provincial partners, our municipal partners are following ethical hiring, and that taxpayer money is not being used to support human trafficking or cartels or illegal workers. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. This is really important that we want to ensure that provincially or any department follow the guidelines and rules are in place, and that they should not be
Minister,
doing
what
the
I'm
wrong
stating
thing.
is
Thank you.
the rules in place, as you're stating, are not adequate. The government's known for over a year and a half. What can we do to change this? We have rules to set up to ensure that the government's not buying from contractors who are subcontracting. It's 2 levels for forced labor. What are we going to do to prevent this issue? And again, we're not looking for an answer right now.
No,
Perhaps
this is
you can
great.
get back
This is
to the
unacceptable.
committee because it's
So
an important
we'll come
issue
back.
for, again,
Thank
to
you.
prevent human trafficking. Sincerely appreciate everyone's time today. We'll actually still get you out on time, Minister Lightfoot. We'll suspend for about 1 minute so we can say goodbye to the ministers, and then we'll keep the other officials around for another 40 minutes. Thanks.
Oh, my mic's muted. Okay, I think that's all we wanted to cover. Like I say, most of these, or like he said, sorry, like Macaulay said, most of the witnesses are leaving. They're just leaving a couple behind to still kind of talk to them for another 45 minutes, but it's still on the same topic. And, the buck stops with the minister, so most of the accountability is with the minister. I've looked at some of the other committees for today. We could tune into the Justice Committee, but kind of some boring witnesses there. These 2 committees with the ministers were probably the best ones that we could have tuned into. So we'll just call it here because I don't think there's much for us to watch for the rest of the 45 minutes that would be left of all the committees anyway. You guys know we're not live tomorrow. We'll be live next week, but Monday is going to be a very busy day. There'll be committee in the morning. There'll be a question period in the afternoon. There'll be another committee in the afternoon. And then Tuesday's the big day where we get the budget. So right after question period, we'll be sticking around on that stream because 4 p.m. will be the budget. So it'll be a really, really busy week next week. Before we go, Spider-Man, thanks for joining the club. And Gordon, man, that's twice for you today. Thank you so much for gifting memberships. Really appreciate you. with the extra support. 20 is a lot for one day, man. Thanks a lot. Jolie is on Monday. Yes, Jolie's in committee on Monday. That's correct. I did double check that. So Monday will be a lot more spicy for committees, and the whole week next week is going to just be really busy and crazy for Canadian politics. But yeah, we'll call it there, and I will see you guys on Monday live. I will get some clips out tomorrow and on Saturday. There's a couple interviews, like not clips from stuff that happened in Parliament this week, but Pierre was on CTV. There was some other podcast committee that I wanted to clip, so there'll be some clips that it's not overlapping from the live streams. So, but thanks everyone for tuning in and watching. I will see you guys Monday live for sure. And have a great rest of your evening and a great weekend. Thanks, everyone, and see you.